everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of thecinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we're celebrating Christmas season the way all Tolkien fantasy fans always have. That's right. Today we're going back to Middle-earth with a review of The Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. We're going to start with an icebreaker question before jumping into a spoiler-free review, where we'll also provide a verdict on the film, and then we'll conclude the show with an in-depth spoiler discussion. Now, on this trip to Middle-earth, I lost a co-host somewhere along the way. I think there was some mushrooms involved. He wandered off the track, and anyway, Laurent Chabin sadly could not be here today. He is, as you say, in all actuality, making the movies instead of talking about them today, so he could not make it. So, in order to make up for the huge absence in my heart, I had to welcome back an amazing panel of guests. First up, welcoming back part-time, full-time host of the defunct On Hold Tunes podcast and artist founder Harold Storey. Harold, welcome, man.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, defunct is that's a great way to describe it. How I'm going to describe it now.
I feel like you could have easily been offended by that.
I would be offended by that.
It's not too late to be offended by it.
I get offended. I'm like, hey, my last episode was like 3 years ago, pal.
I'm going to go yell into a pillow at home.
Hey, what, Harold, and I'm being, in all seriousness, a lot of your interviews are pretty evergreen, though. If you go to that feed right now and listen back, I mean, with a lot of the folks in animation you interviewed, that's pretty cool stuff.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I always kick around the idea of bringing it back, and then I don't. And I'm like, maybe Caleb will just have me on his. And I'm in Laurent's spot. I'm like, God, this is
literally sitting in his
shoes
seat
to fill. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Only the most honored guest get to sit in Laurent's chair. So there we go.
Use the throne for a king.
Today, I thought it was a fun intersection because in my interview series I did during COVID, or at the tail end of COVID, where I was like 3 films that you watched to get you through the pandemic, I remembered Harold, not only a fan of anime, had said, I watched Lord of the Rings for the first time during the pandemic. And
I never saw them. I'd never watched any of the movies.
Well, Harold, I promise it wasn't totally random, though. Lord of the Rings, anime, had to bring you on, man.
That's the Venn diagram is a circle.
Well, Harold, I hope it's okay. I also brought back another one of our guests who you spoke to last year in our review of The Boy and the Heron, Amber Hanneken, the Soonercon director of marketing. Amber, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I am also typecasted as a weeb.
Yeah, I didn't do it on purpose, but you know how you're like, who do I go to anime? Yeah. And then you start making a list and you're like, well, Amber was really good last year, so let's see if she wants to talk anime, Lord of the Rings.
It's always funny whenever the best part of like watching anime is like when you see other people that like it and you're like, freaking nerd. And you like it too. You're like, wow, look at them.
I mean, like going to a convention, like, look at all these fucking nerds.
Yeah.
Last, but certainly not least, very excited to welcome another special guest. First time guest on the Cinematic Schematic. He's the Soonercon chair, Matt Cavanaugh. Matt, welcome.
Thank you very much. My first time here. It's quite a setup you have here, and this is really impressive.
Oh, thank you. I feel very lucky. My wife gave me the opportunity to use this space for a podcast room. I feel like I hit the jackpot on that one, but very lucky. So Matt, I hear you're a big Lord of the Rings guy.
Maybe. I feel like if you say yeah, people are gonna be like, we'll see.
Yeah.
So I need to hedge every bet I can.
Actually,
that's only if you're a girl.
You're a Lord of the Rings fan. Name every elf.
Name every elf.
All of them, every single one.
Talk about the Noldor, or I think I have probably spent more time reading pointless facts about Tolkien than your average person or the world, but I would hardly say I'm about ready to start my own YouTube channel and like deep dive into stuff, but I enjoy it.
So maybe frame it this way.
In this room, I'm a scholar, I guess.
Yes, there we go. If you feel like you've made friends along the way in this introduction, let us know. Leave us that rating and that review in your preferred podcast app, most notably Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Guys, I haven't got any reviews in a while. I could use some love. Get us up to 100 soon would be lovely. But yeah, if you've enjoyed the show at all this year, we have a couple more shows left before we wrap up our 2024 season. Hey, let's break I know we've already sort of broken the ice, but let's look at let's talk film anime adaptations, right? So this film, The War for the Rohirrim, is an anime adaptation of the a story from the appendices of Lord of the Rings. So before we even get to the movie, I just thought it'd be kind of cool to just kind of shoot the breeze a little bit and talk about maybe some other series that could use the anime adaptation treatment. Most famously, The Matrix did this in the early aughts with the Animatrix, and I mean, at least having not seen everyone made, I would say that, as I recall, one of the strongest.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember the whole Empire. They have the video game that tied in.
That game was tight.
And the
The
Matrix
PlayStation game.
Yeah. But anyway, what film series that has yet to be adapted is a good fit for an anime adaptation? And Harold, you came ready. I want to say,
I did.
what you got?
Okay, I had a few, but one that I thought of, and then when I was doing more research, I was like, oh, there's actually kind of a cool connection here with the two suggestions that I had. So I was thinking, I kind of worked from anime, manga, like writers, and thought, what would they be good at, or what would I like to see? So I was thinking Junji Ito, and I was like, oh man, a body horror thing. So maybe Alien would be cool.
Ooh.
Like an
That'd be
alien
gross.
by him. And then I was thinking, or Frankenstein could be cool. So like a whole universal monsters thing.
Frankenstein.
Yeah. Just like what's happening to their bodies and, what's going on with the
I feel like Junji
human
Ito
nature in those,
would make a sick Frankenstein.
But what I didn't remember until I was looking up Frankenstein was the alternative title is The Modern Prometheus.
Yes.
And so Alien, the prequel, is Prometheus. I was like, oh my God. It's a conspiracy.
Junji Ito.
I know, yeah.
Come on, man. Disney's
FBI
calling.
text me. They're like, stay where you are. So I thought of that one. That was the first one I thought of. I had John Wick.
Yes.
That would be cool to see as like the person that made Fist of the North Star. Just because I wanted to see like an action one.
Yeah.
I think there's actually a John Wick anime adaptation that's been announced.
Hey.
I don't know who's animating. I don't know, but I think Stahelski's at least on it.
All right,
Yeah.
man. Hand on the pulse.
Mhm.
And then I had a couple others, but maybe I'll just stick to.
You can't take all of them.
I know. I'll do
You already
one.
stole my John Wick.
Oh, really? That's crazy.
He does lend himself to anime quite a lot.
Well, that's why I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's like,
And-
I feel like the whole John Wick universe feels like anime.
Yeah.
and
So over the top.
And Keanu literally can't keep doing the stunts. I mean, I saw an interview. He got asked about it, on his press tour for Sonic the Hedgehog 3 as Shadow the Hedgehog. He got asked about it, and he's like, my will says yes. My knees, my knees say
The mind
absolutely
is-
not.
Am I just strong? The body is weak.
So anime, it's not quite the same as getting like all the stunt work, but you could still have the John Wick 5 lines in a movie, right?
Yeah.
Like
That's it.
from Keanu Reeves. There we go.
All right, I'll only do one more. I won't take any more. But I thought the 28 Days Later series.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
But
Sick ass
with-
trailer just dropped this
I
last
know.
week. Yeah.
But we'd have Kojima and Guillermo del Toro work on it.
Hideo Kojima
Yeah.
Yeah.
on 28 weeks. Dude,
The whole series, bro. Like that would be sick.
it would get really twisty. I'm
That's what
into
I'm
it.
saying.
It would and like Delta, man. Trying to imagine. I mean, we might get something kind of like that with these new movies, but it won't be as crazy as if
No.
Kojima had done it.
That's what I was thinking. Death Stranding kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mixed with 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
like,
man.
that could be kind of sick.
I'm into it. I just say Kojima does XYZ and I'll show up, even if the last third of everything he makes is like goes off the rails into nonsense, and I love it. Amber, what would your selection be for a film that lends itself to an anime adaptation?
Okay, I have two and a serious one and a joke one.
Mhm.
The serious one is Mad Max.
Ooh, that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Strong female protagonist, like current Mad Max. I think they do a really great job with it. Like just animating the desert. Matt, was that anime that we watched where like everyone's racing in the desert? I can't remember the name of it. It was like
something.
but that kind of made me think of it. It's very like Mad Maxy. Like
Mhm.
it's like people come from all over the world to the US and it's like set in the like early days of like Cars, but obviously a big fantastical version.
Right.
And there's like a race across the United States.
That sounds super cool.
Yeah, it was like really cool. I can't remember it. And I just remembered it when we were doing the Mad Max thing because I don't think the next season's come out.
No, it's a finished. It's a finished show.
Oh, is it? So we
Yeah.
just need to catch back up on it.
No, we're done with it. The racing one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're done.
Oh, sad. But yeah,
you didn't want it to end so badly.
know.
Yeah.
I've been there.
I thought,
I know. Apare Raman.
yeah, I knew it had a funny name.
Apare Ranman.
But yeah, anyway, I just think the Mad Max universe has a lot there and a lot of action that just could be animated very beautifully, and a lot of just really cool characters. And then my troll one is Shrek.
That's amazing.
I mean, I
That's
feel like
great.
if a Shrek anime came out, it would make a ton of money,
Oh, it
and we'd
totally
all
would.
watch it.
That's wild.
The millennials would watch it for nostalgia, and the youngins would watch it to make fun of us.
Yeah.
That's true.
Like, how could you ever take this so seriously? Oh my god, that's a great pick. Fun fact: Furiosa, an incredible movie that no one saw, unfortunately.
We saw it.
We saw it.
Thank you.
I thought everyone saw it.
Well, the box office says no one saw it.
It was so good.
It was incredible. I say no one saw it. A lot of people saw it. It did not. It was a big flop.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
For how much it cost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
devastatingly low. I made a fraction of
I
what
didn't
Fury
realize
made.
that.
Yeah, I was trying to get everyone to go see it. Anyway, beside the point, it was.
Caleb was like, I wasn't part of the problem.
No, I was literally I went and I would take friends to see it. I'm like, see, it's great. You should watch it again. Was actually originally the script was originally an anime that was going to come out around the same time as Fury Road, and for whatever reason it fell through.
No.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until I started researching the
Hand to
movie.
the pulse.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's to say, George Miller agrees.
Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road, great choice for anime.
Mhm.
Matt, what would your selection here be?
I have two. One of them is not a film franchise, but it's another Tolkien story I'd like to be adapted. I think that's on brand. The first one would be the Mission Impossible series.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
good
I
one.
think you can do a nice slow burn kind of espionage series, and it doesn't have to be a movie per se, but you can do a good series and really take your time with some of that stuff. And obviously, the stunts and things they're a lot easier to pull off. You don't have Tom
That's
Cruise
true.
jumping off a mountain on a motorbike.
And
Cool
they
to
can make
have
them
a-
even crazier. I mean, again, they're wildly
Over the
impressive as
top,
live
yeah.
action, but they can have
Yeah.
that anime element that just goes
Yeah.
bananas.
And anime does do a great,
That'd be tight.
everyone always thinks anime is oh, well, pachow, oh my, if you're not, yeah, ooh, woo, anime has some great, gritty stuff,
Yeah.
like Steins Gate and things there's some really great anime out there that pushes that stuff without having people super powered jumping around. If you're not inundated in anime that you might miss because you watch DBZ. But and then the other one is it's a Silmarillion story. The problem with Silmarillion stories is it's a little hard to lead in and lead out of them, but I will say Beren and Luthien. It's a really nice story. It's about these two lovers who are a little bit Romeo and Juliet-esque, but not quite as star-crossed and tragic. But it is a great story about how they save each other in a, I don't want to ruin it, but it is a great story of how they love each other and are destined for each other, and they save each other. And I do think anime can handle like a Makoto Shinkai or something like that. It could do a good story.
Do
on
your
that.
name?
Get in the whimsical
What?
romance.
Did he do your name?
He did
Yeah.
Your Name.
Yeah.
He also did Weathering with You.
Weathering
Suzume.
with You. Yeah, that was
and then
tight.
Suzume.
Suzume last year.
Yeah.
I never
It's a
saw
great
that
movie.
one. I need to check
Suzume
that
is
out.
good.
Great.
Suzume is better than Weathering with You.
Oh,
I agree.
okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I liked Weathering with You okay, but
Your Name is still the top
Yeah.
tier.
Weathering with You
Yeah,
has
Your
some
Name
kind
was
of weird
the
plot things.
it does. It
Yeah.
does have some weird plot things, but it was.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful, and they actually wrestle with gun violence. 'cause
Yeah,
it's
which
Yeah,
is
that was
wild. You don't even
wild.
see that in anime very much.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, it was surprising. It was a
Jeremy's
shock.
broken type.
Yeah. But yeah, Makoto Shinkai is a great pool. He does the whimsical romance quite well with a little bit of hint of
The
tragedy.
forlorn,
Mm.
Yeah.
missed opportunity love.
Mhm.
Yeah, misconnection type
Yeah.
thing.
That is a great pick. I had John Wick also, so we've already said
Oh,
that one
wow.
to death.
You ruined
Parallel-
everything.
parallel thinking.
I honestly
Mhm.
thought Matt was gonna. We didn't talk
No.
about it before. I was wondering if he was gonna say John Wick.
Well, this guy's
So-
I got 5. Hold on.
So
I am so sorry, y'all.
So it's
I got
not.
all excited about that question. I was like, my God.
So it's not a movie, but I'm very. There was this show like no one watched and got critically panned. It was called Cowboy Bebop. I think that would make a great anime series.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Got jokes.
Yeah, JK. No, I also had Alien. We were on the same vibe, Harold. I was thinking Alien it was like I put an anime version of Scavenger's Reign, which is not anime, but it is animation, but it's not anime. But you just take, it's got like a really strong, distinct, honestly, like Ito-esque aesthetic to it. I was like, if I can apply the visceral horror of that series in the form of anime onto Alien.
By the way, that series is incredible.
Oh, Scavenger's Reign?
Yeah, and people need to go watch it on Netflix so that we get a next season.
They're not redoing it.
They already said?
They
Are you
officially?
sure?
They said they weren't.
I don't believe you. I'm gonna
Look it up. Also, to fact check myself, Tolkien died in 1973.
Stop hurting my feelings.
I'm just pointing out he died in 1973. Just
I haven't heard the Scavenger's Reign news
you were
either.
too far off.
More.
Dude,
What?
that's
You weren't too far
rude.
off.
I was about 10 years off.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to ever take 10 years off my life.
Prices
So, you know.
Well,
fair.
I
fair.
have a funny live action Cowboy Bebop story. I'm gonna throw Aslan under the bus.
do it.
Oh, don't do
Oh,
that.
I don't know about Aslan, but just, fun story. We don't even name names.
It's fine.
Someone who's
No,
definitely
it's like
not
a joke
Aslan.
amongst our friends. She laughs too. So she's not an anime person. She never watched the anime Cowboy Bebop, but for some reason when the Netflix series came out, she watched it.
Bless her heart. And Aslan
That's
does
amazing,
try.
bro.
Yeah, she
Aslan does try to meet the weebs more than halfway. I will say she tries.
Weirdly, she likes Konosuba.
Konosuba is legit because we made her watch it.
Because we made
Though.
her watch the Konosuba movie.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Movie's fire.
She watched the live action series, and we were like, all the rest of our friends were like, weebs did not watch the live action series, and we're like talking about it. And then, like, partway through whatever we're talking about, she was like, well, I thought his name was Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, no.
She thought Spike was named. Like, she watched a whole live action series and did not get that his name was Spike. So I think this is a lot about the series.
His nickname
We love
was
you.
Blake.
We love
we're
you,
like,
Aslan.
no.
We love you.
Cowboy Bebop's his government name. Spike's his nickname.
Cowboy Bebop's his slave name. Jesus.
I can't wait for everyone to listen to this and be like, who is Cowboy Bebop?
Who is Cowboy Bebop?
Oh, man. Great story.
Did you have any more?
No, that was it. I also, that
I have
it.
one that I need to throw
Oh,
out that I
no.
didn't at first because I didn't want to take it. But in honor of Laurent, I did say the Fast and the Furious.
I thought about that.
Okay.
Fast and the Furious.
They already have that. It's called Initial D.
Yeah, it's called Initial D, and I'm pretty sure Fast and Furious ripped it off.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
We're like meta.
I'm talking about Dom Toretto.
Okay, probably. Okay, which version of the Fast and Furious?
We're
Are you
like
talking the
human
first one or like
Carapede on
or
the
like
first
5
movie.
forward? Because 5 forward is when that's when it gets.
Not when they got
crazy.
dumb. The first movie.
They were all dumb.
I mean,
That first.
Who literally gasped.
Amber, it's been great featuring you on this podcast. I hope you have a great day. No, it's-
I did rewatch that first one not that long ago, and they're like, their whole thing is like they're robbing trucks and everything.
DVD
And
players.
it's like VCRs. I'm like, when did this come out?
Yo, these have
Fun one.
Bro, these have timers built in. They're great.
They're like on their Nokia phone.
yeah. Those movies have not aged particularly. The
Yeah.
earlier ones, particularly, have not aged very well. But I do love the silliness of the later ones.
I did watch the first one, and then I watched one that our friend Philip Grimes had us watch, and he's like, "No, you got to skip over Tokyo, and then you have to go right to this one." And we're like, "Okay."
It's probably Fast Five.
And then we watched. It was the one where they went under the mountains to Mexico or something.
Oh, that's
right,
that's the fourth one.
The
That was
fourth
the one he
one.
told you to watch.
Yeah.
He was like, "This is the good one."
Philip. He has some.
Bye.
Interesting.
Sometimes he
Bye.
has some odd tastes. Like Philip is a combination of I love Fast and Furious and kaiju.
Wow.
Like he
Yeah,
just
those are great. We
Yeah.
love kaiju.
Man
here.
said, I contain multitudes.
yeah. Many universes live inside of me, and they're all giant monsters.
Listeners, what film series would you like adapted? Could it be Fast and Furious? You can let us know by sending us an email at thecinematropolis@gmail.com or hitting us up on Facebook at facebook.com/thecinematropolis or on Threads or Instagram at the Cinematrop. Without further ado, let's get into our spoiler-free review of The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim.
All Middle-earth knows the tale of the War of the Ring. But 200 years before that,
Riders of the Mark! Brothers of Rohan!
there was an older tale.
Arise! We come with an offer to strengthen Rohan.
Hera, daughter of Helm, I, Wolf, seek your hand in marriage.
Our fathers speak as if I were not even in the room.
I do not want to marry you.
You do not seek an alliance. You seek a throne. You will live to regret this, old man.
According to IMDb, the War of the Rohirrim is described as a sudden attack by Wolf, a clever and traitorous lord of Rohan seeking vengeance for the death of his father, forces Helm Hammerhand, that is his name, the king of Rohan, and his people to make a daring last stand in the ancient stronghold of Hornburg. So for those of you who maybe aren't all on up on that, the synopsis did not provide a very important detail, which is the War of the Rohirrim is set 183 years before Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings film trilogy. As I noted a moment ago, the story for this film is based on vague details provided in the Lord of the Rings appendices about the history of Rohan's leaders. Specifically, Hera, not named, is just unnamed female leader of Rohan.
Unnamed daughter.
Unnamed daughter, yeah. She's not actually even listed as a leader or anything.
Oh, gosh. Well, I can't wait to get into how they...
It's not a real history. He just stopped imagining.
He was like, names for two
This
boys.
was a person.
A
Yeah.
girl named Hart.
Yeah.
We're not even going to give her a name. She's unnamed.
Yeah, she's unnamed.
Well, this film, just a little bit of context, backstory. This film was announced in June 2021 and was fast-tracked at New Line Cinema and WB Animation. This is not the official, but this is the largely reported version, is in part to retain the film rights to The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings at the time. The film is directed by Kenji Kamiyama, best known for working on several follow-ups in the Ghost in the Shell series, not the original, but some of the follow-up animes. Ultraman, he also did the Blade Runner Black Lotus series that came out a couple of years ago that I thought was pretty good. The film, don't worry, film fans, the film does have ties to the trilogy. It is executive produced by Philippa Boyens, who co-wrote the Lord of the Rings trilogy with Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson. Last but certainly not least, who did they put in this film? Well, none other than Brian Cox as Helm Hammerhand. That's right, Logan Roy here to lead Rohan. Gaia Wise as Hera. Luke Pascalino, probably saying that wrong, as Wolf, and Miranda Otto does return as Eowyn as the narrator.
Mm.
So that is a little bit of context about the War for the Rohirrim. Let's just real quick, before we even get to our thoughts on this film, you guys, in short form, just really quickly, are you a fan of the film series, The Lord of the Rings? Like, how far does your fandom go, I guess? And I'll start with you, Amber.
Oh, I love the Lord of the Rings. It came out when I was in high school, and we were reading the books at the same time in school, and so there's just like a lot of memories tied to it. Obviously, there's beautiful films to watch, and yes, very big fan.
Very nice. Harold, newfound fan,
Yeah,
but
they call a filthy casual.
Filthy casual.
I've only seen each one once, so I need to rewatch them because I did go with a friend that is very versed in it. I'm like, I need to be filled in just in case I'm missing anything important, and so he's able to fill me in on a couple things throughout the movie. But
you're like Sauron and Saruman. Which one? Wait, which one's the wizard? Which one's the fiery eyeball?
One's the evolved form.
Not to be confused.
like a Pokemon. But yeah, I like the series, man. I couldn't tell you why I never watched the movies. I just never.
You all
did.
got blind spots, you know.
Yeah,
it just happens sometimes.
Where were you?
Yeah.
When they came in?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lord of the Rings is it's kind of astounding. I mean, I think when the 4Ks came out, me and my wife rewatched the extended editions a couple of years ago, which it is kind of flabbergasting how well those movies have held up. Like, a lot of movies that are 20 years old, you go back and watch them, you're like, oh, well, this thing's not aged well. But
it's the practical stuff, man.
It's the effect. I mean, but like everything, the casting aged, the writings aged well, the visual effects, because they were so focused on what, actually capturing as much as they could in frame. Yeah, sure, there's some things like that are obviously CG, but in general, it's an additive thing.
Yeah, like the Nazgul creatures in the river.
Right.
Like some of that is like, okay, but the Hobbiton, It's amazing. These people still
it
go
still
to
exists.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's great.
It's incredible production design. Like all of it, all that's to say, I think the Lord of the Rings trilogy is a masterpiece, like timeless classic. They held up, and at least as, if not better today than they were when they came out. 20 years
Easy
ago.
A, or you do out of 4 here.
I go letter grades for this show.
Okay.
I'd go like easy A.
Easy A. Like Hobbit for me would be like a B.
Yeah,
Like
B minus, depending on which one. Yeah.
First one, solid B.
Yeah.
I think the first one was solid B. Last one,
Forgettable.
B minus. It's hard. Like
Well, they just that's a whole.
it was
podcast.
flabby. It just got real flabby. They're like, we need to take this Bard character and make him wait. We need to show that he's a family man who takes care of his family. It's like,
Well,
all
that's
right.
what I'm saying. They started extrapolating to the point that it felt like I'm like, what am I supposed to focus on here?
Yeah. There was like all these added characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
that said, I think the Hobbit movies are fine. I actually think I do think the hate they get is a little much. I don't think I specifically think the first 2 are pretty good. The third
It's like
one's
the Nickelback of fantasy movies a little bit.
But
Sometimes.
were they panned when they first came out, or is this like a later on?
No, they were pretty. Well, they weren't
when
panned.
they announced that
like-
they were a trilogy, a lot of people were like, "Are you serious?" Like,
It didn't meet
you
expectations.
gave a trilogy to Lord of the Rings that is 3 books, and for one book you're going to make a trilogy. Like, immediately people were like,
Everybody knew it was
one book
cash
that
grab.
is shorter and way
Shorter.
more streamlined than
"Yeah,
Lord
it's
of the
a
Rings.
very like to the point. Like, it's just a quest story. Like, they go and they do their thing.
It's a
and-
MacGuffin.
Yeah.
So I don't think those movies are trash. I think they got problems, but I did enjoy rewatching
yeah.
it when we did the.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think it all the things that you said about Lord of the Rings, where it holds up really well. I think the problem with Hobbit is that it relied a lot on
the
CGI and kind of like, we all know, like, why is Legolas in this movie? Like, it just, Legolas dancing on bricks as they're falling because everyone liked the Oliphant scene. It's just, there's so many things that they added. Like, Thranduil was cool. I think Lee Pace did a great job as Thranduil. But at the same time,
Lee Pace in anything. I mean,
Lee Pace is great. He's a beautiful
That's
man.
Oklahoma's own Lee Pace.
That's right. Oklahoma's own.
He's from
Chickasha, I thought.
yeah,
Why don't we bring him out?
because he is a actual big movie actor.
He really
And he would
But maybe he likes Oklahoma enough to come to our
we
little
can ask him.
So everyone at the table, as you can tell, listeners, we are big fans of varying degrees, but we all really love Lord of the Rings and like some of the other things, related to Lord of the Rings, whether it be The Hobbit or the TV series we've already mentioned. So what did we think of War of the Rohirrim? Matt, I'll start with you.
What did I think about it? I think that it was, it was great. I really enjoyed the story. I think there was a lot of room to play around with that. I do think in terms of like, sometimes animes can look great in stills, but maybe the animation, the actual movement parts of stuff could be a little bit better. I did think that it wasn't the prettiest anime I've ever seen. It definitely did have elements of feeling a little rushed. You can tell the studio didn't get all the interstitials as much as they wanted between the marquee shots. But I do think that when it comes to overall, I think it was very pretty in a lot of areas. I think it told a good story and it stayed true to many of the beats. It did change some of them, but it stayed true to many of the beats that occurs in that, as we mentioned, that single page mentioned in the Legendarium and in appendices about Helm Hammerhand. So overall, I think it did a good job of cementing the story around Helm, his sons, cementing the, without any spoilers, cementing kind of that royal line and what happens, and establishing a new character that would fit very well into the world of Tolkien, and that's with Hera. I don't know. Anything else? I don't want to give anything away, but I think overall it was a very enjoyable, well told story. I don't think it was any problems with the pacing. I think that maybe the first half might have seemed, quote, boring to people. Maybe there wasn't enough. Maybe people weren't throwing enough pies or sword fighting or whatever, like bread in circuses enough. But like, I think with anime, and because we had a director that is associated with anime is kind of masterful in a way that a lot of Western storytelling doesn't, is, the idea of telling simple stories slowly and understanding that not all character arcs have to be Himalayan You know, they don't have to have these massive highs and these super lows. You can have character arcs that are, you know, like foothills, and you're supposed to enjoy the character as they traverse this. Now, I'm not saying that the movie itself didn't have these big crescendo moments for these characters, but in the beginning, it's hard to say whether or not we're setting up. But that's something that anime kind of lives in, this whole kind of Eastern storytelling, where sometimes you're just telling a linear story without having to worry about, like, you know, the heroes being laid low and that they're sent into the underworld and their rebirth and stuff like that. That whole kind of hero's journey stuff doesn't always have to happen the way we need it to in the West. And some people, they interpret that as boring. Right. And I don't agree that War of the Rohirrim was boring in any way. I think it took the pacing and the time it needed to tell stories, because there's a lot of people who aren't familiar with any of that. They're like, who is this guy? Why do I care about him? All I know is he is not Bernard Hill. You know, like,
he's Brian Cox though, which is not nothing. You know,
but everyone knows Bernard Hill. They know Theoden. They know, like, that was their Rohirrim, and everyone remembers the horn in the third movie, and here comes the Rohirrim. That was a great moment. And, you know, this movie was supposed to tell that story, that history that occurred. And they did a lot without giving us too many member berries and just letting people kind of exist and be in that moment and exist in that time. And I thought it was a really nice touch having Eowyn tell a little bit of that story as the narrator. She herself is kind of cut from the same cloth, that same kind of breed of character that Hera is purported to be. So I can just keep going on, but please.
We got more podcasts left to get.
Yeah,
Don't
please
worry.
go ahead and just cut me off at any point.
But it sounds like you really like it, which is good.
I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I went a little too long.
No, not at all. I appreciate the context and the color commentary. Amber, what did you think of the film?
I loved it. I just really enjoyed it. Like, visually, I just was having a blast watching it. And I really loved that it took its time to tell a story. I feel like we got to know the characters, and the thing I loved the most was Hera. Like, I just think that she was a great heroine. I really feel like I got to know her and what she's all about and who she is as a character, and even all the other characters and the side characters and stuff like that. I think the pacing gave us time to, like, kind of get to know some of these other characters, but more so through Hera's lens and, like, how they relate to her, and why kind of like this family dynamic and also this royal dynamic, and this it's very locked to this region, this very Rohan, and I don't know, it was, if you don't like high fantasy, and it wasn't just high fantasy, it's high fantasy with, like, no magic,
Right.
Then that's also where I think, like, Matt already brought up the boring thing. Like, this is something, like, if you're reading reviews out there, I think it has like a 51% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's kind of some criticism people had, is, like, boring, but, like, if you're not a fantasy fan, then it might not be for you. But I just think give it a shot and, like, come in with an open mind of, like, you're going to be learning about this world. And yeah, I can't really think of, like, much I didn't like about it. Maybe there were, like, a couple times where it was like, I think, like, the opening, like, I was, like, a little worried about the animation. There was some, like, weirdness. I think they were trying to do this weird transition from, like, the real world to,
Yeah, there's some. I am going to be a little harsher than you all on it, but I did think there was some animation transitions that were really weird.
There were some
and
weird
editing
transitions.
choices.
I agree with that. Yeah. I think I'm less critical of the animation because I've watched so much anime, and there's such a, like, range of what anime can be. It can be, like, so detailed and beautiful in, like, every frame, like Makoto Shinkai we talked about before, where it's like everything is drawn, everything is animated. And then you have, like, some shows where, like, it'll be like a still frame for, like, I swear to God, like 30 seconds.
It's just like a narrator going.
Yeah. It's like, and then, like, we're seeing, like, the back of their head or something like that. And then there's just, like, yeah, like, talking going. And I'm just like,
So much
that,
ADR.
Yeah. And I'm like, that sometimes that drives me crazy, but I'm here for the story, so I'm in it. So I think I'm a little more forgiving of animation in some ways, which like maybe I shouldn't be since it's the Lord of the Rings franchise and like they should have the money.
Yeah, well, that is
From
part
your
of
lips to God's
yeah,
ears.
I mean that's I'll keep my lips tight for another minute. Harold, what did you think of the film?
This movie was woke. No,
I knew it. I knew I had you pegged. I knew it.
forget we're in the Bible Belt, pal.
Not the women.
How dare you put women in my Lord of the Rings?
Wow.
The vagina quotient was too high in my movie.
No, I really enjoyed it, man. I know I was exactly what you were saying with the animation. I was like, man, I don't know. But for me, with the animation, whether I like it or don't like it, I think it kind of depends on if I think it takes away from the story, and I didn't think it took away from the story for me. But yeah, I think there's times whenever you don't really know something about a property and you're watching the movie where it was like, this is just a story about, this thing that happened, and I don't really have any context or background. I kind of enjoy that because it's like, I don't know, there's like no pressure to like
watching Willow for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, yeah, you're thinking about, what's the plot line? What's this character doing? What's their motivation?
You're not worried about how does this tie into the War of the Rings?
Yeah,
somehow.
like I think I don't have that stuff in the back of my head, so sometimes I think that can be good maybe, but like I said, I went with my friend that's really versed in it, and so we had a great discussion after, and he was thinking about, he told me some of his thoughts and stuff that he was thinking about different parts that maybe I missed, and I was like, oh, yeah. But it's one of those ones where it like makes you want to watch it again after, and you're like, I saw it that time. I didn't miss the thing that we talked about. But yeah, all in all, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I love the characters. I can't wait to talk about that a little bit later. There was some cool stuff that went on with that. But yeah.
Yeah. No, so I'm glad to hear you all loved it. I did not love it. I did not hate it. I think what I really like about it is the style points you get from anime. Like there's some fight sequences in this that are just like super badass, and it's action that really can only be done in the way it's done in the form of anime. I don't want to spoil the movie, but towards the end of the film, Helm Hammerhand gets in this really cool fight, and I was like, this is anime ass shit right here. And and like it's snowing, it's like his motions are very stylized, all like I love it. Chef's kiss. And I really do like the main character, Hera, quite a lot. I love it because she kind of without giving away too much of the film is constantly dealt a bad hand, but has to continually be the source of strength and reason for the family the entire time, and you get to see how that pays off. And I also thought the villain Wolf was, he turns out to be kind of a sleazy turd, but they do a good job at the beginning where they give you just enough where you're like, well, maybe maybe he has some justification for feeling this way.
Yeah, he's kind of heavy-handed. I will say,
once he goes bad,
he's pretty heavy-handed toward the end. It's just like, dang.
At first they're like, well, there was that one time we were kids, you were really nice to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I see, there's a good person there. And then like once they have that breakup scene and when she's imprisoned towards the beginning of the film, he's like, no, I'm evil.
You're evil now.
Did you not hear me?
Yeah.
Inside me there are two wolves.
He's a little one note. Inside me there's one wolf. It's just wolf.
Inside me there's one wolf.
Only wolf.
I also found it hilarious, and I think it's intentional, but I also thought it was hilarious how he just constantly, he has his right-hand guy who's constantly giving him advice every time. He's just like,
hey, bro, I don't know if I would do that.
Yeah, that might be a little spoiler.
I guess a little bit. It is very funny. It was like, by the time it happens at the end of the movie,
we laughed. Like, we laughed at the last one.
Same.
It was just like,
there was,
dude, like,
this
why
dude's like the dude's like the audience insert where it's like, I don't know, man, you're kind of a bitch.
Yeah, that's true.
And everyone's like,
like jilted lover kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was good. But again, that's another like kind of trope that I appreciate a little bit. He's a little one note, but I say it to say the way the characters are sketched, I think was appropriate. So all of that's really good. What I personally struggled with the story. I didn't think of it as a pacing thing. It was more like outside of Hera, what is it I'm really invested in? And what I came back to is really, and we'll talk about more in spoilers, but it's more or less just an origin story for Helm's Deep. I think that's in the. I don't think that's a spoiler, but
Wow. Trigger warning.
But I guess for me, it's,
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. Yeah.
It's one of those things. I'm like, what is the draw? You have this character you're following, which I like.
Yeah.
But there were certain times I'm like, am I watching like a?
It's actually an origin story for. Well, I don't know if I can say much without. No, I can't. I can't say without.
What is it
a
considered a spoiler when this is literally in the appendices? So, like,
No,
these,
well,
these
it is
have been
spoiling
around
the
for
movie.
like.
It would be spoiling
Well,
the
yeah,
movie.
if someone hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
Do you know? So there's in Star Wars, there's Wikipedia, and for Lord of the Rings, it's the one wiki to rule them all wiki.
There's also Encyclopedia.
That's kind of wordy.
Arda.
Okay, see
The
there we go.
Encyclopedia.
That's
of
the
Arda.
real one.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
That one's a really old one.
At times, it felt to me like an article from a wiki page, where it's like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened.
Oh, I did
Now,
not feel that.
I say that to say I did find the main characters again. I found Hera to be compelling. I kind of felt Helm Hammerhand when he wasn't being hilarious to be really annoying.
What about
Yeah.
Olwen?
Who is that again?
She's the Shield Maiden.
Oh, okay, she's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay.
The only character I thought was annoying was Leaf. That was it. Leaf is just supposed to be this.
I hated
girly-
Leaf. I was like,
He's best boy.
Best boy.
I asked that, and I'm like, was he supposed to be a hobbit? And he's
No.
like, because there were no hobbits there. I know that there's no hobbits there,
He's just a
but
short
he was
king.
like a hobbit analog. He's a short, he's not a king. He's a short something, and he just acts like a buffoon, kind of like a hobbit.
like a hobbit.
And I feel like that was just their hobbit insult.
That was like the
yeah.
Which leads me to my other other main critique. Again, none of these ruin the movie for me. I just am calling them out. I found that
You're way
times-
better at reviewing movies than I am.
I don't know. I just at times I felt like I was looking at I was reading a wiki page. This is my experience.
No, you're
that's how I
good.
felt. And the other was, and honestly, it wasn't really that bad until closer to the second half of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was not loaded with member berries, to your point. But especially the last 15 minutes, it's like, hey guys,
Remember Helm's Deep?
remember Helm's
some
Deep?
winks back
Well,
to
you
the-
remember that this is in the same universe that
Right.
features
You mean the
Gandalf.
Hornsberg?
Wink. It's
so
like
you don't like that?
I don't.
It's kind of hard for
me,
not
it
to be a
was-
member.
Does it take you out of it?
To me, it was like a lead-in to like.
It's
'cause-
kind of hard. Like they filmed, The Godfather and Goodfellas in New York City. It doesn't mean that they're like,
In the same universe.
in the
No,
same-
no.
Well, no, it doesn't mean like they're member berries for each other because they're both in New York. I mean,
no,
there's only one
no.
Hornsberg.
It's
I got you.
I don't want to spoil it. It's the completely unnecessary appearance of certain characters that I'm like, what are we doing here?
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you're talking
Or-
about.
Shut up.
I've got to go do this thing for this guy. What's
That's like
his
the
name?
worst kept secret, by the way.
It just, well,
they were at the premiere. They were talking about it at Dragon Con. They were really kind of pushing
Oh man.
Uh-huh.
that thing.
well, and
They're like, we got to shoehorn this in the last 10 minutes.
well, and then there's like little smaller things, not as big of a deal, but there are smaller things like, we've got to have a Hobbit-like character because it's a little. There's just it is not totally ruined the. None of these things ruin it. For
I
me.
didn't pick
But,
up on the Hobbit thing until she said it. I mean, afterwards, I could be convinced that it
Yeah.
was supposed to be Hobbit code. But while I was watching it, I didn't think like he's supposed to be a Hobbit.
yeah.
I just thought he was supposed to be that bumbling, annoying,
Yeah.
like,
But
oh,
why?
he's so goofy.
He just didn't need to exist.
He did not.
The
literally did not.
Hanna-Barbera
He
type
didn't serve no
character.
real purpose in the
Yeah.
story.
It's like Chekhov's idiot. Like it didn't need to be
Well,
there.
there's just a lot of things that it's like we got to remind people that this is a Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
movie.
I see what you're saying.
Those don't ruin the story, but I felt like they more distracted from it.
It's like
a little bit.
heavy-handed, you think?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
But
I
this
can
is,
see that.
but I had fun. I thought like I said, all the stuff that leaned into the anime-ness was money.
Mhm.
I did find some of the transitions to be a little weird, specifically when they would do the action shots where it would get 3D for like a second.
Yeah, that was
Um,
trippy.
Anytime you do that, it's a
I
risk.
don't love
That
it.
was like
I
the
don't love
opening. It
that.
was like this weird 3D mountains zoom
Yeah.
in thing, and I was like, "Whoa, I hate this."
The
And
Eagles. I got
and then,
motion
like,
sickness when the
yeah,
Eagles came.
and
I
then
was
like
"Whoa."
and then they like when they got back to like her, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is better now. Like,
Yeah.
I can deal.
Yeah,
I-
horses are notoriously awful for animation. So
Well, and it is a big action spectacle. And anime is really good at action, but the type of action they're trying to adapt, which is like the big battlefield, Lord of the Rings, people on horses thing, it's a challenge for sure.
you ever seen Vivi by chance? The anime Vivi? Like
Mhm.
that is great action animation and like if they had got that team to do that, I forget what studio does it. I don't know if I forget, but
there are a lot of great studios.
I don't know if it was Mappa. I don't think it was Mappa, but they would have killed that movie. But the thing is, you need time. It takes a while to do this stuff. And I feel like the animation was rushed.
I think you're right, though. They fast tracked this movie. I think they basically announced the movie with the intention of we need this out in less than 3 years.
But I could bring up stills of that, and there are some beautiful shots, especially the background. They did a lot of work to make sure that the background was not crap. Usually in anime, they give the background the least amount of work, especially if you're working episodically in series. But they did such a great job on making sure that the background wasn't crap. And I could show you stills of like almost every point in that movie. It looked great. It's the motion that they lose it. They just didn't have enough to
I
really.
feel like the motion with Hera though was usually pretty good.
I think so.
And the fight scenes, they were better than normal.
The sequence that sticks out to me where I noticed the most was there's a big battle, the first big battle in the movie, which is roughly around the end of Act 1. You know what I'm talking about, where there's a lot of horse action stuff. That's where I was like,
yeah, it was
most of the time.
So this is
suspect.
Rohan. There's going to be a lot of horses.
Yeah.
So if you don't like
Gonna be
horses,
horses.
This is Rohan, exactly.
The Anglo-Saxon Viking
if you're a
coded.
horse girl, this might be for you.
Well, let me ask this, while we're keeping it spoiler free, and then we'll move on to letter grades. But, especially with everyone here having a lot of, I would say more experience with anime than most people, how well do you guys feel that this movie utilized the anime style to enhance the story?
I think, I would think they did an average job in terms of the anime is a loaded term, but just what did anime as far as like all the tropes that come loaded with it and the stylistic choices, what did it lend to the movie? I think it lended very little in terms of the action, and it lended very little except for a couple scenes. I do agree that there was a couple of scenes, especially in the later half, that lended itself, that anime was like, this is anime. But for the vast majority of the movie, it could have easily been a Western style animated studio could have done it, and it would have felt the same. I think stylistically, the only thing anime really gave was the character design. I think the character design was the biggest thing.
They crushed the character design.
Yeah, it imparted quite a bit to the character design, but still staying true, because if you look at the credits, Weta did do a lot of consultations on that stuff too.
Very cool.
I think I have trouble imagining the film not animated, and being as good. I think that
be very dark.
Yeah, I think that
nighttime,
I think that like what we talked about before about like sometimes anime just like takes its time. Like if you've seen there's some Ghibli films like Only Yesterday and things like that are just kind of like slice of life, and there's not like any of these, like they take their time like telling a story and like building character and stuff like that. It just like lends itself to anime, and like I just don't think you could tell the exact same story in live action and it would be as good. I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much. I do think that another anime studio, like some of these like big ones like Mappa and some of these other ones that like are just putting out beautiful anime, could have done way better with it. But yeah, like I am, like I said before, pretty forgiving of anime. So
I hear you though. But basically, what I'm hearing is it was good enough, could have been better, and maybe didn't necessarily take a lot of like the core what separates anime and utilize those strengths as much as it could have, but still did enough for you to be satisfied.
The major strength we're overlooking for anime is their ability to absolutely crank out animation very fast. That's the major thing, is that I'm not trying to disparage it, but it definitely feels like where they really were running to an anime studio to do this is because anime is notorious for working their animators like workhorses. And they were able to crank this out at a relatively low cost.
I made it worse.
They were able to crank this out at a relatively low cost versus approaching a Western studio or to try to get it done. And their timeline, usually anime studios, they give compressed timelines and they really push people to put stuff out. It's pretty notorious. It's like one of those dirty secrets that's in the industry. And that's why I think they ran to anime to try to pull this story, because as we mentioned, it was the rights issue that was cropping up.
How can we get this out? Because we definitely can't get a live action movie together that fast, right?
No, yeah, I know, for sure.
Harold, what do you think? I mean, how do you think this movie utilized a lot of what makes anime cool, fun, interesting?
I think they did make some interesting choices. Like, the thing that I like really kept taking me out of it for whatever reason was like the fire stuff, like that, like the elemental stuff. I'm like, this looks strange to me. I don't know why. Like that sticks out in my head. But it's always this live action adaptation thing. This discussion comes up every time we talk about doing this, is that it's just not there. They can't pull it off in live action.
Mm-hmm. So
in that sense, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the story. You get to do things at a scale and scene wise that you maybe wouldn't be able to pull off as easily in a live action, and maybe it's a little bit more. It fits in a little bit better. It's a little bit more believable. But yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have seen. You know who I would like to see do this was like whoever did the Castlevania.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That would have been a great. Which I don't know. I'm not trying to dunk on these people that made this movie, but it just I didn't love the animation, but that doesn't make it bad.
I felt like they were almost trying to mimic that style.
Yeah,
like
it was. It was like a combination.
It was like a combination of styles,
and I usually don't love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe that's why some of the like that 3D stuff was a little. It felt like there was a few moments that you're like, I'm not sure if it took me out of where I'm like, I can tell this is animated and it feels like it doesn't jive with what I'm seeing before and after. Like the little transitions.
Yeah.
Didn't ruin it.
Yeah. And this isn't a spoiler, but they would do things like hold on shots. Like when there's a part where she goes into the forest and it just shows like 3 different shots of the forest. And I was looking really close. I'm like, am I supposed to be like looking for something or what? Like what's going on here?
Yeah. There's quite a few shots if you look at them. It's just beautiful blonde people mean mugging the camera, and they just hold it, a little bit.
Some of it is, I think that they really want to do justice to like the world that this story is in.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of, to your point, you talk about the backgrounds looking great. And I think maybe it was just, they were trying to make sure that they really nailed that. And then maybe that was,
I don't think the backgrounds were like genre defining in terms of like how incredible they were. I think that given how disjointed some of the animation could be at times, I was shocked that much effort was put into the background, because they probably knew, we can't just have this look like Naruto, like kind of deal.
Yeah.
Well, I think a couple things I want to add. I mean, I think you guys have said it pretty well, which is they do enough for me to be like, okay, that's kind of cool, but there's a lot of opportunity probably for another studio to have done it differently, probably better. I do think, listen, guys, Helm Hammerhand, that's an anime ass name, okay?
Yeah. The HH.
Yeah, and I actually think the way they portray that character, he's the most anime thing about this movie, I think, honestly.
Yeah, he's like over the top.
Yeah, like over the top. He's big and theatrical, which is why it also is so great they cast Brian Cox, who is known for playing very big, loud, boisterous, theatrical characters. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying he's my favorite part of the movie necessarily, but that is whenever he was doing something, most of the things he did, it felt like they were more anime. Like, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a thing he does at the beginning of the movie where you're like, if this was live action,
one particular anime, I wonder what it is.
Yeah. He does one thing, and there's but it's like, but live action, no one would buy that.
You said it without saying it. That's amazing.
You could say there was one punch that could be heard around the world of Rohan, but I'm saying like stuff like that in a live action, you'd be like, no way, dude, there's no way that'd work. But in the movie, he's like, he's got the name and he's got he's like 2 times bigger than everyone else.
Well, it's the Broly build.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I think. He being the most anime thing, at least Caleb Masters' interpretation of most anime thing in the film, I actually could have done with more like soapy melodrama, because I did feel like the character, like especially with Wolf, he's one note, and I'm like, yeah, make him the sad boy. Like let's flesh him out a little more. Like you can take some time off some of these other people I don't care about and just put it on him, you know. Make me like feel bad for him even though he's also awful. Like, you know. I feel like there's a lot of anime out there that are really good at capturing those elements. So I say it to say, like, I think it was a good, not great anime use of the anime style.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like if this had come out straight to Max, which I'm pretty sure, at least my hunch is they were originally going to launch this as a Max exclusive, or HBO Max at the time when it was greenlit. Warner Brothers Discovery, there was a merger that happened since the film was greenlight and when this came out. The movie's been delayed a few times. Regardless, I said to say, if this had been a Max film, like just went straight to Max, I probably would like it a lot more. It reminds me a lot, in mostly good ways, it reminds me a lot of like, you know, like 20 years ago when there would be big properties and you get like those anime adaptations. I mean, obviously there's the Animatrix we mentioned, but even like Watchmen, it wasn't anime, but they did like the animated spin-off, The Tales of the Black Freighter, like these like separate made for DVD side story type things. It felt like one of those. And if that was the context in which I was viewing it, I probably would feel less strongly. But because it was a full big screen experience,
it felt safe, I think, is probably what they were aiming for. They wanted to kind of, and you know, seeing some of the reviews, it cuts pretty much like down the middle. People either didn't like it or like it. It's pretty safe kind of choice that they made. They picked a relatively, they picked a place that they could riff and not create too many waves in the overall canon. And you know, I think it worked. But do I think it was really going to push it? Did it push any barriers in anime? Did it push any barriers from as far as storytelling? No, it was just a relatively safe story that they told, and I think they told it well. And I think the things that anime does do very well is anime does do female protagonists very well,
and this film does a great job. Hera's a great character.
If you like female protagonists and you bemoan the lack of them, and you are not watching anime, you are making a mistake. Some of the greatest anime films in history, just forget anime films, just some of the greatest animated films in history have female characters in them, you know, and it's because anime, it does that. And I think this is another classic example. If going back to what we're saying, what does this movie do so well that made it, that anime brought to it? It is that classic female protagonist that is just done really well. Not like, well, you know, the best one is like Ripley, right? And I hate that argument so much. I hate how everyone always trots out Ellen Ripley every time we talk about female protagonists. It just, my eyes roll in the back of my head. Because if you poll men, you get Ripley, right? Who's the best female protagonist? Well, it's Ripley. It's because they basically wrote it as a man and then they just gave him boobs. Like, that's Ripley. If you poll women, they're not going to say Ripley. They're not going to say, who's your favorite female protagonist? I would be shocked if Ripley was like in, you know, their top 5 consistently. I would that women resonate with very different things than men do. Like even in this movie, Hera's character choices were very different than I'd say like a man would do in that same situation, because she occupies a different societal position.
Yeah, well, they do a good job at sort of setting it up as she has to start the film in a traditional role where she's basically constantly telling all the men what they should be doing, and they constantly blow her off and talk down to her and write her off and treat her like she's property. And then, you know, the movie obviously pivots at a certain point, and we get to see how she steps into the role to lead the people at a certain point. So,
because I guess what I was saying is that we generally tend to get in this weird, we need to write men and women the same, and because we are afraid of having any kind of dimorphism in our characters and how we tell our stories. And I think in anime, they're just not afraid of having women and men occupy different narratives and react differently under the same circumstances, and that just be natural and that be a thing. I don't mean in like, and all men or women are separate and that's all things the way they should be.
No, but it's addressing like the, you know, especially when you're putting it in the context of Middle Earth, you know, women are, they're not typically leaders. They're typically kind of treated as property, very traditional, right? And so the movie does a good job.
To an extent. There, like, I think people who make, who kind of make a critique about, Tolkien women, that's just their hot. They don't know enough about, the other women in whole different aspects, but not just your Galadriels and stuff like that. There's like Haleth and all sorts of other famous women who were leaders of their people and fighters, and they were pretty prolific in shaping the world in some way. And so Tolkien wasn't afraid of that, in having women be in positions of power. Tolkien, unfortunately, was just an object of the time he was born in.
Right. And I guess that's what I was sort of trying to get at. Not necessarily saying that Tolkien fiction was like anti-women anyway. It's just like, the way he writes women, especially in Rohan, which from what I understand is a more traditional, it's more rooted in tradition.
It's Anglo-Saxon,
right,
kind of Viking, kind of tones.
Very patriarchal type societies. And I think that, anime at large for sure, but I think this film does a good job. I mean, as the guy saying this anyway, Amber, I'd love to hear if you feel differently. But it does seem like it does a pretty good job sort of splitting the nuance between she has this set of obstacles because of her status as a woman in the society that she has to either overcome, sidestep, or just live through until she has the opportunity to step up in the way that she was always capable of doing. Right. At least that's how I read it. But
yeah.
But what do you think?
I also I like her because I think like too, like women are written a couple ways. Either, I guess, like what you're saying, maybe they're just
like the Joss Whedon,
yeah, or they're like or like the Brave, or it's like I hate everything about how I'm raised, and I just I want to fight against society, and like Hera's not really like that. Like she ends up kind of occupying that space in some ways, but like she just wants to be herself. And she does want, she's confident in herself. And I think I like that too. Like she's definitely confident in her ability. She's confident in who she is, but she's also not trying to she's not in the beginning of the movie, not like trying to I want to be the warrior queen or something like that. It's just, she's just like, I'm just trying to be me. Mm-hmm. And I think I like that about her a lot. Like there's some tropey things in there and stuff like that, like the do I have to wear the dress kind of thing and stuff like that. But I think they handled it in a very natural way, like where she didn't like fight it like in Brave or whatever. Like no, it's like she ends up putting the dress on, and that one's also like a throwback to Aowen. Right. And I do think like the connection to like Aowen being the narrator, and Aowen's like a very like beloved. I think she's a very good character too. So I enjoy that.
Yeah, very cool. Well, let's go ahead and get to letter grades. We have a couple things we want to hit on, spoilers. So Harold Storey, I'll throw it to you. What letter grade would you give Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim?
I gave it a solid B, honestly. I really did enjoy the story, personally. And then, like I said, I think it just kind of goes back to, do I think that the animation, because it wasn't something that I personally am a big fan of, do I think it took away from the story? And I didn't think it did. So that was kind of where I landed on that one. Like, I don't know that I could call it an A just because of a couple of like the animation things specifically. But other than that, I mean, I think that's just kind of where I ended up landing on it.
Yeah. Very cool. I mean, I think that's a very respectable letter grade for the movie. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of good things it's got going for it. Amber, how about you?
I give it an A-. I enjoyed it. I would want to watch it again. And I also liked what it added to this universe. I think it is like additive. And we learned something new. And so I enjoyed that. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, and like beyond just like the movies, I think that you would enjoy it.
If you ever wondered how did the name Helm's Deep, this movie's got you covered. All right. Well, Matt, how about you? Letter grade?
I would probably give it I'll say B+. I thought it did a really good job of cutting a really nice swath through the lore while still understanding that the lore is important, but also expanding on it in a way that felt good. Animation wise, I think it's pretty average. Maybe the visuals, the color choices, a lot of that popped really well. The fight sequences, as was mentioned, were really good. And the character payoffs, I felt were earned. And overall, the story was just a good, tight, 2 hours or so, I think it was. So overall, I think it's a solid B+.
All right.
Would watch again.
Would watch again. Okay. I'm coming in a little colder, but I still like it. By the way, I just want to preface this. I like a lot about
I
it.
don't believe you.
I'm going to give it a C.
Wow.
Down the middle.
That's not I don't think that's you like it.
No. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't give it a C. I say to say, what if this movie was only an hour and a half? And what if it was a little more focused? And what if it was a little more anime?
That was my buddy that I went with did say, he was like, man, that probably could have been about 30 minutes shorter.
There was especially in Act 2. It wasn't awful. I wouldn't say I was bored, but there was a point like somewhere in the second act where I'm like, where am I in the story right now? I was like, how close, like, I know that's sort of probably the Western sensibilities coming in. I have watched a lot of anime, but you're just like, we're watching, you're like, I feel like we should be feeling the momentum towards the end. And right now I feel like we're just kind of meandering a little bit.
Sometimes you just have characters say things because it's important to hear the characters say things in anime. Like, you need to hear the wisdom or the words come out of that character to establish who they are. And that exists sometimes independently of any kind of underlying linear narrative.
Sure.
That needs to go. And does it, I'm not saying they nailed it and that's what we did. This was not a slice of life kind of story or one of those, it's not like a Journey to the West where it's like told in that kind of Eastern storytelling way. This was trying to be a coming of age hero tale. And I do agree with some of the criticisms how, if we are going to get the characters from here to there, you could trim some of the stuff off of there. Definitely.
There's also just there was some weird plot stuff I might mention in the spoilers that I felt like somewhat contrived. But again, that sounds hard. This all sounds harsh. Sounds harsh. I did have a good time. I loved seeing the spectacle on the big screen when it leans into the anime stuff. I really like it. I really like at least 3 of the main characters. I can't tell you much about the rest of them, but I really hated when they were like, "Hey guys, did you know this is tied to Lord of the Rings?" Which is most egregious at the end.
I can't wait to talk about that because I disagree so much.
Whoa!
Okay, yeah, I know. Let's go.
Okay,
I'm gonna burn
I don't feel like
down.
there was that much, and it literally is supposed to lead into the Lord of the Rings, like
not for 183 years.
Yeah, but like. How old is Gandalf?
Gandalf is ageless.
Ageless.
Yeah.
He's been on Middle Earth for thousands of years at that point.
But I will say, I would recommend it to Lord of the Rings fans. No bones about it. Like, I mean, I just think it's an easy recommend. I think if you love that world, if you love that world, you're going to find things to enjoy. If you really like anime, I wouldn't recommend it just on the promise of anime, but if you're interested in Lord of the Rings and you like anime, you got to check it out. No doubt about it.
That's a great
I agree with that.
That's a great way to articulate.
If you're like, what's the next hottest anime I'm going to watch? It's not
this ain't it.
If you're like, I like My Hero or Naruto, it's probably not for you though.
Yeah, either one of those franchises has better action animation than this
it's not even just that. I just feel like those are like,
it's not a shonen.
Those are just shows that like it's shonen's like the action just keeps going, like, and like
a shonen is the ultimate version though, ultimately, of what this is. A shonen is the character and their power arc, essentially. It's their acquisition of power and friends, and it's their story. It's literally their journey as a story. And that's kind of what
I do think if you watch Demon Slayer, you would like this.
Maybe in some way.
Because I feel like the main character, Hera, is like a lot more like the main character in Demon Slayer.
Tanjiro?
Yeah. Like just ultimately very good and always trying to do what's right.
So if you were going to recommend something to go along with this, Demon Slayer would be, Amber, was there anything else you'd recommend to go alongside War for the Rohirrim?
Yeah. So like outside of anime, there's Tamora Pierce as an author that she writes young adult stories, but it was like very like coming of age for me. And specifically her series, The Song of the Lioness, is about a girl it's a fantasy setting of it, like in a society, and she and her twin brother's supposed to go to be a knight, and she's supposed to go to magic school, but she wants to be the knight. So she cuts all her hair off and goes to night school basically, and becomes ultimately becomes a knight, and it's not revealed that she's a woman till toward the end. Spoiler. But it's very coming of age, and it's yeah, I just love the Tamora Pierce books. Now I haven't read them since I was a kid, so like maybe they don't like it age as well. It is like young adult fiction, but that universe, I would love to see an HBO series made of it. I know there's been a couple of times that like she also does a series called Immortals that like some of her series have been potentially picked up and then they don't. But I think
So
that
close.
would be a good one.
All right, great recommendation there. So close. Maybe we can call our friends at Max. Harold Storey, what would you recommend alongside this movie?
Yeah, I this might be the basic bitch in me, but I had this year I just read all the ACOTAR books, A Quarter of Thorns and Roses.
Wow.
And,
okay, ma'am.
well, like basically the gals I work with bullied me into reading these books, so I was like, all right, I'll check them out. And then I just couldn't stop reading them.
Nice. That's always a good sign.
But there's specifically a part in one of the later books where they talk. There was a kind of a parallel that I found there was like a specific legion of female fighters that was no longer around, and they were trying to bring it back, like with some of the training and what they were trying to do. Character wise in that book, and that really reminded when I was watching this movie, it reminded me. And in the books, it's called they're the Valkyries, is the group of
like the
female fighters.
So like similar to the Shield Maid.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like,
concept.
dang, like that. And if I hadn't just read that, it may not have been. It was fresh on the brain though.
Mm-hmm.
So I would
Nice.
suggest that series specifically. I think the last book is where a lot of that happens. And then I had 2 suggestions for anime. So if you watch this movie and you like the style, I would say check out Ajin on Netflix. I don't know if any of you have watched that. It's a pretty similar animation. So that was the first thing that I thought of whenever I saw it. Whenever we were watching this movie, I was like, this reminds me of that Ajin show. I don't think I ended up finishing it for whatever reason.
But you recommend it.
But I would say if you
enough.
like that style,
Yeah.
you should check that show out.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like that style and you want like a cool show with like a cool like strong female protagonists,
Right.
heroes, there's 2 I would suggest. One's Outlaw Star. There's some cool female characters in that. A criminally underrated series, got overshadowed by Cowboy Bebop.
Because they're
And-
very similar
Yeah.
elements.
And then just simply for style, if you want something wacky, crazy, kind of its own thing, not so much the substance of it, but Kill La Kill is something to check out. It's just because like people have never watched that.
All this
If-
old
when they watch
anime.
it, they're like, ooh.
Like all this old school anime. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I'm an old head like that.
Harold, go on back to the classics.
I know. But yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to try to hit both sides of it. Like, if you like it, try that. If you don't, like, if you want something different than what you just watched, check this stuff out.
Very nice. I think I love the plethora of recommendations.
For sure.
Matt, how about you? What else would you recommend alongside War of the Rohirrim?
I'm going to stay in world. If you really like Tolkien and you liked what this story talked about and having this story told against this backdrop of just this utterly massive world, I suggest you read Children of Húrin. It's the story of Turin Turambar and the bloodline that has been cursed by Morgoth. It is kind of a bleak story. It deals with struggles against fate. Tolkien was somebody who, after coming back from the horrors of the First World War, was a person who really believed in, like, he needed this. He needed the idea that you had to, if you believed in good enough, it'd happen. Children of Húrin is almost like an antithesis to that mindset. It is just bad things happening to good people because it's your fate. And I wouldn't say it's a pick me up, but it is definitely an interesting kind of challenging emotional book that definitely has some WTF moments in it, but it's great, and it still takes place before the story that we're talking about now, War of the Rohirrim. It takes place before the War of the Ring. But I recommend you can read it. It's easy to. It does kind of jump into his timeline. You don't have to read the Silmarillion, though. That kind of stuff helps. But other than that, I think if you really like Tolkien, you will like this.
All right. And you said it's just so easy, you can just pick it up. I love it. I love that. That's not always the case with Tolkien. So
no. I mean, context always helps Tolkien, but you can just read the story and get the concepts from it.
Mm. Love it. Great recommendations. Mine are. You thought yours are basic, Harold. I'm just
Dragon
gonna
Ball Z
say.
is it not?
Yeah, I mean, pretty close.
It's modern Shakespeare.
I think Princess Mononoke from Studio Ghibli.
Man, how did we not mention that yet?
I mean, that is one of his most popular Miyazaki's films. But if you're looking for the closest analog, I would say of the films he's made to this is probably going to be that.
Lots of great
Nausicaa's
female characters.
pretty close too.
Nausicaa is probably the closest.
Yeah. I think Nausicaa's a little closer.
True.
It's post-apocalyptic.
It's not the post-apocalyptic. It's the character, like the leader of her people. She's literally like a princess, kind of. She's, she has to step up, and she's very confident. She's a writer.
She's highly skilled.
Highly skilled.
Yeah.
Well,
Mononoke's kind of that man versus machine.
Yeah.
I feel like that Mononoke are also very similar, though the most notable difference being that the protag and Nausicaa being a woman. There's a lot of what's George Lucas call it? They rhyme in terms of the two films storylines. But yes,
they're not
Nausicaa,
the same, but they rhyme.
Exactly. Thank you. He's not repeating itself. It's rhymes.
Okay.
but no, Nausicaa is also another great recommend from the Miyazaki book, and I think if you're looking at it from the main protag's point of view, then I would say Nausicaa has more in common. If you're looking for more like in the world in terms of like the high fantasy nature all playing a role, I think Mononoke's got more covered there.
I think Mononoke is a better
monsters.
movie.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, the monsters.
I think Mononoke is a better movie than Nausicaa.
Princess Hanneken.
I know that's hard to compare.
They're both great. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think I like Mononoke a little better, but
he's a more experienced filmmaker at that point.
Right.
And so he makes better decisions.
And I'm just going to also say, we brought it up, I mean, Amber said it earlier, but Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, and I'm just going to say it because also cool female protag story. The action in that movie is freaking incredible. And once again, no one saw it, no one saw it. It really did not do very well at the box office,
get the love it should have
meaning that a lot of people did not go see it. Go see it, please.
That's so funny. A guy that I work with just posted on Instagram stories that he watched it, and I hadn't seen it yet.
Oh, yeah?
So I was like, man, what did you think? Because he's pretty
It is a shame.
We like the same, we were pretty similar. He was like, dude, you should watch it.
It's pretty great.
So,
it's not
I missed that one.
It's not as much pedal.
I miss all of Lord of the Rings.
Well, fair.
Harold,
I was in cryostasis.
Harold's been a father the last two. Give him a break. He's,
Yeah. He's been a father since 2001.
Not that I know of.
I was in 10th grade.
All right. Well, let's jump into spoilers for just a few minutes of spoiler talk, shall we?
Sure.
All right. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the War of the Rohirrim, go ahead and tune out now.
The old alliances are dead.
Gondor will answer.
Gondor. Where was Gondor when the Westfold fell? Where was Gondor when our enemies closed in around us? Where was Gondor?
All right, so I had two topics, but they're really very adjacent topics. The first one being the fine line between a prequel and an origin story. So this film is set, as I said earlier, 183 years before the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Though it does take place in the same universe, the story is largely focused on original characters or at the very least, characters pulled from the appendices from Lord of the Rings. However, there are several small tie-ins to the main franchise that make appearances, especially towards the end of the film, indicating that this somehow is influences or is part of the future events. So let me just ask you this, and unfortunately we're a little tighter on time than I'd like, but I do want to get your thoughts on this. How would you describe War of the Rohirrim as a prequel or origin story, and then maybe how would you define that distinction? I don't know, Harold, you're chuckling over there. I'll throw it to you first.
Man, I don't know that I'm qualified enough to talk about this, but I will say that I always do like because I really did enjoy watching those movies. So I'm never mad when I learn more about that world that I really enjoyed spending time in. But I don't know. I couldn't really decide how I felt about that end. I'm more interested in hearing what Amber has to say. But
no.
I can't think of anything else. No, I
No,
love that.
Amber-
Well, I love thinking like because you're blind. You have blind spots, you know. So I'm like, if you mention something I didn't think of, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, like I never thought of that.
How
But
about, how about resurrections? How about resurrections for an ending, Harold? Come on.
fair.
Yeah. Let's bring back, I mean, Christopher Lee,
Yeah.
Saruman, one line.
Is it from archival footage? I thought I read.
Yeah.
I read like one guy that was mad about it, and I think it was you. Like,
I'm not actually.
I literally saw that. I'm like, there was one guy
No,
who was
no.
online. They're just so mad about this, and it was actually just Caleb out there. Like,
No, I'm not mad. It's not that they'd use Christopher Lee's voice. I think his voice is incredible.
I heard it was AI.
No, it's not.
I was just
No, it's archival.
Caleb's about to swing on me.
I'm not mad that he's here. I'm mad that it felt like they're like, hey, we got this line we could use. Let's just throw it in there. That's what I'm mad about. But Amber, I would love to hear what you think.
Yes, same.
I don't know how to answer the question necessarily because I mean, I guess you feel like you'd have to look up the definition of prequel. But I guess like what I think of as a prequel is almost like it's a required watching to, and I think maybe we have that question later, but like is it required in order to like if you're doing like Star Wars and you're like reordering everything and they're like, you need to go watch this first before you ever like get into it. No, like I don't
Like,
think,
would you not know what's going on without watching this?
Yeah, like I don't think this is a film that like you would like now that it's here. If someone was to start with Lord of the Rings, they need to watch this film first before they get into The Hobbit and then get into like Lord of the Rings. Like, no, that's not the case. So I think probably it falls more into origin story because of that territory. I think that the nods they did made Hera a more interesting character. So I have a lot of thoughts about. So they start the film with Eowyn saying like, basically, this is somebody you've never heard of and never will. And I think that's very interesting because she's an unnamed character, and so they're making up the story for her. I think they did a really good job with it. It feels like Tolkien to me. It feels like a story Tolkien would tell, and a character that Tolkien would make. I think that they try to do things to be like, this is why you've never heard of her story. So like Matt and I have talked about this, like Freyalof does become the next king of Rohan. Like
he's the second line of kings.
He's the second line of kings. It is known that when Helm dies, his children do not continue on the line. There's it's just his sons, and then there's an unnamed daughter, and that's the line's ending. And then his brother's son, Freyalof, or sister's son rather, Freyalof, continues the line. So, and Matt would say this, in the stories, Wolf is killed by Freyalof.
Oh.
So I believe that what they're trying to do is that history is being rewritten, like we all know, because she goes off at the end and she just wants to like do her thing. Like she doesn't want to be a leader. And that's kind of what I was saying with like she just wants to be herself.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I think the stories get rewritten because Freyalof becomes king, that he defeated Wolf.
Right.
Like that's kind of the way
they rewrote history.
Yeah,
they attributed it to him.
they attribute it to him.
That's a great
so I think that's really interesting. But like, I mean, these stories do literally lead into Lord of the Rings. Everything does. Gandalf is around at this time. And Matt can speak way more to this. Like the Eagles and Gandalf have a relationship. And so, and at this time, I do believe that the orcs would be searching for the ring. But Matt can speak to that better than I can. So I just think it's interesting, to tie in these things, because it all does lead eventually to the Lord of the Rings. Like this, the ring goes back quite far into the history.
Is the Hobbit between these?
The Hobbit's not until like about 120 years after this.
Hobbit's about 100 years before the War of the Rings.
Is it 100?
Okay. Roughly before the War of the Rings.
So it's 83 years after.
Before the Hobbit.
Yeah.
Right on.
I think Bilbo
and I
is
think you just have to
111.
think that like elves, and this is a universe where things live longer, too. So
yeah, I'm not going to fight with you about any of that. I think some of this is just me bringing my just exhaustion with IPification of everything to the movie, which is like, if you're gonna mention Gandalf, like, I just want it to matter.
Is there a purpose?
Yeah.
What's the
If
purpose?
Saruman is gonna appear in the movie and you're gonna have Christopher Lee voice him, I'm like, dude,
You thought it was just like hey, don't forget this is Lord of the Rings.
That's how it felt to me.
Okay.
The orcs are looking for him. That said, everything you say is true. I know those characters exist in this universe. I know Saruman being named like the next.
Well, I mean, Isengard's in this film too.
Yes.
Like, and so like I'm sure people are wondering like, well, why is Saruman in Isengard? What's going on with that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was kind of where Saruman came in. Like, okay, now Saruman is coming into Isengard. So
he was gifted Isengard.
Yeah.
Saruman didn't just appear out of the earth and conquer. Isengard, its other name is Orthanc. It was gifted to him because he had helped in some campaigns and helped protect and shield during that period of time. Without getting way too deep in the lore, because you can get way too deep in it, I don't want to take too much of everyone's time. I will say that it's not a prequel and it's not what was the other?
Origin story.
It's neither of those.
Yeah.
The best way to describe Tolkien, and this is something that I've had this idea. There's a difference between, say, a Brandon Sanderson who writes prolifically, writes wonderful worlds, everyone loves it. But Tolkien's world building and his Legendarium hit a little bit different for everybody, because if you squint your eyes and turn your head a little bit, it could almost feel like it was real. It could almost feel like it would be our story.
Human history.
Like it could almost be an alternative human history in a way that some other ones don't quite give you that same feeling. And because of that, and the way he's written it, and the way he's approached his world building, it has this feel of like mists that surround things. And if you stare enough at one part of it, you'll zoom in and you'll see, or something will materialize for it, and you'll see a story happening here. Because the thing to keep in mind is that the entirety of Middle Earth, where this is occurring, takes place over thousands of years. And there are so many characters that the lines and the threads, he's not afraid to have characters that have been consequential terminate to nothing and have their story end, and not all roads lead to the War of the Ring. I think that's important for people to understand. This is all not being written to lead to, these events don't all go to the War of the Ring. It's like an evolutionary tree where not everything leads to us, right? There's branches and things end and there's dead ends. So in like the Silmarillion and the Forgotten Tales, there's all sorts of stories, tragic or otherwise, that don't necessarily have an impact later on these things. And to your criticism, where did they need to tie it so tightly to Gandalf and Saruman? No, they didn't need to do that. It would have been fine just leaving this alone and having the story be like, this is a story that you've heard in this world and they existed and it is true. But at the same time, you have to understand that maybe there's a little bit of unreliable narration going on, because did John Henry really drive every rail spike? We have our own stories.
Right.
Sure.
It's the myth.
Did Helm
story
Hammerhand
myth.
really not kill him with one blow?
That was some anime shit right there. Not only does he hit him in one blow, he's dead. He's like, there's no way he's dead. I only hit him once.
You
I'm
can't
gonna blow
follow
your
a guy
mind.
that gets knocked out.
I'm
in
gonna
one
blow your
punch
mind.
like that.
All that shit existed before that anime. They didn't make any of that up.
That is all.
He did
Tolkien's
kill someone in
reading.
one blow.
Really?
Yeah,
he
I
did,
love it.
and he did.
That's the- I-
did die. Like they found him frozen, eyes open, ready to fight.
That's
that is not
incredible.
anime stuff.
That's
That is
See, that's
real.
the stuff that
Yeah, that's
felt
been-
like anime.
Yeah.
And they thought they utilized it well in the film. Okay, that's cool.
Fair.
Helm Hammerhand was this unbelievably.
He's about that life.
Also, that name. But
He
yeah.
he is a character, and that the reason you see some nerds lose their shit about stuff is because he is kind of like this like character. He's like the Tom Bombadil, where like everyone's like, oh, it'd be so great if we had more information about him. And to be fair, I don't think Helm was backseated as a character to the extent that some people make it seem like he was.
I mean, he's pretty prominent.
Yeah, I do. I think that his story was adequately told, and it was told the way it was written. The only changes that were made that were significant were where his sons died and what they did. But they did die. They were killed. They did not live. Hera's
one of them because of a really tired horse.
Yeah,
I know.
That was my plot.
I was sad for that
Guys, you had a
horse.
whole pack. Could not one
Bro had
dude
the-
not have him hop on your horse?
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
you
one
notice
horse
he
with
killed, he
asthma and
killed
all
two of them
Middle
before
Earth.
they captured him because
Yes.
they had 4.
There was 4. I
and
noticed
then
that.
there was only 2.
yeah,
Man.
So
Yeah.
And then the old boy took the arrow to the neck.
yeah.
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 That was a bad case of
Too
arrow to
bad.
the throat.
Too bad there wasn't a whole bunch of other people also on horses around him when his horse got tired.
Yeah, that was
I was
funny.
like, you're royalty. Come on.
She mentioned loaning her horse to him
She did.
earlier, so he just missed out.
The only,
Yeah.
thing I
Foreshadowing.
the only thing I couldn't confirm was whether or not the old maid who was there, if that was her wedding dress or not. I wasn't sure if that was hers.
Yeah, I didn't.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's
That's a
something
good
to
thought.
that wedding dress thing that I missed.
Yeah, what
that
was
there,
the
I feel like there's
lore?
more to
And that
it.
was a pretty iconic. That was a pretty iconic look when she went to battle in a wedding dress because she was
It was
married
cool.
to death. I think that was a. I think
That's
that was a.
pimp.
That was a
I
cool
loved
fight.
the whole
Yeah, that was sick.
ending.
Yeah. The ending was very strong.
Well, Ben and I were talking about that ending because, what I said before is that in the actual story that has been told is that Freyolf kills Wolf. And I loved what they did in that, she has her pity moment, which I'm just like, kill him, kill him, kill him. And I told Matt, I was just like, kill him. And then Matt was like, but that's not who she is. Like, she's ultimately a good person and like she doesn't want to just kill someone.
She has sympathy for Wolf.
She has sympathy for Wolf. There was a person there that she loved at one point, even though he turned into a total nut job. And it was like he got his revenge on Helm Hammerhand, but then it was like, that's not enough revenge. I have to also get revenge on the girl who scorned me.
Yeah.
And that's when you're like, oh, he's just an incel now.
Yeah, he
actually.
was a total incel. Yeah, and then like you said, his like
They did a really bad
assistant
job.
guy who's just always like, bro, no, and he's like,
It's a good idea.
Oh, yeah.
No, his
His right hand man
like,
guy.
I don't.
That was so funny.
No
man.
hesitation.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
every time. I don't think it's a good idea. I'm gonna do the opposite of what he just told me to do.
Full send.
why did he stick around for so long? Like,
Yeah. Well, so
Oh man.
they should have done a better job of outlining who like the Dunlendings were.
yeah,
and where
because
they,
I was like, why do they have pointy ears or pointy teeth?
they're
Yeah, that was
human.
crazy.
No, they're human. They're not like mixtures or anything like that. They're human. The Dunlendings are. Once again, I'm not going to get too deep in lore, but they were a constant source of consternation for Rohan. And Lord Freka, because he's on the far western reaches of the Rohana kingdom, he is part Dunlending, as most people live in that region are, because people crossbreed, people get along. It's not always like life is not always up here between powerful people. There's a whole lot underneath here. So that's the reality of that. And that's why Wolf himself was part Dunlending. And that's why he made that line, what am I not good enough for you because I have, I'm not, I have that dirty
It was
blood.
classic
Yeah.
projection.
Yeah. So I do think they didn't do a good enough job of understanding like why it was such a big deal that
Some of that
Wolf
like,
ran to the
political
Dunlendings
stuff.
and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. That was where it was a misstep. But then again, like they can't make that movie
Right.
3.5 hours.
Right. Yeah. So circling, I'm just going to close the loop on that question I asked about the distinction between the prequel and the origin story. And this is okay. I like to play podcasts like jazz. So, but the reason I want to point out, because I think the thing I've, to your point, Matt, I'm trying to figure out where I would put this movie. So when you think about a prequel, it's the official definition. Well, official definition according to like one of the dictionary
Webster's
websites.
Dictionary.
Yeah, exactly. One of the dictionaries I googled online is a movie, a book, or a play that develops the story of an earlier movie by telling you what happened before the events in the first movie. So
Literally, yes, it is.
So by that definition, that would make it a prequel. Whereas the origin story is a backstory or established background narrative that informs the identity and motivations of heroes and villains in a comic book or similar fictional work. And I struggle with this because initially I was like, I even said the river. I think it's like an origin story for like Helm's Deep, like because I feel like that's outside of the characters. That is the thing I learned the most about in this movie that informs the trilogy. And then that had me thinking, I'm like, well, I don't know if it fits either of those definitions, in a way, although it does align with the prequel, but it's not really like a prequel in that you must watch this movie to understand you know, Helm's Deep battle in Lord of the Rings. So I kind of think of it more or less as like, you know, as mentioned that wiki page. It's like,
do you think it's like a Rogue One to you, or
like a
well, there are
story in the
times
universe
there
kind
are
of thing?
times it feels like Solo, and that's the parts that I don't like.
I haven't seen Solo.
Where it's like, oh, did you ever wonder how he got the name Solo? No, I didn't. Well, you're gonna find out. How did he get that blaster? I never once thought that was a question I should ask. Well, they got a movie for you. There are times I feel like it does that. More times than not, though. I think it's probably like more in line with like a
history.
I don't know, like Andor, except for Andor's really good. Like it's like a story that exists. It's a story that exists in the universe. That technically is threaded in the same sort of tapestry of the history, but it's also not like a story you need to understand the main beats of the larger story either.
Yeah.
It's sort of like if you ever wondered about this, you should watch this, but you also don't need to
It's
watch
not
that.
required viewing.
Right.
Yeah,
No,
exactly. I
not
think
at all.
there has to
That's
be an
probably
example of this.
true.
I can't.
Star Wars is what I've been going to. I'm like, what's the
I
good
think
Star Wars
Star Wars is a
example?
I don't know. I
I
think
think.
Rogue One's pretty close. Like,
Yeah,
Rogue One
you
was
don't
important
you-
because that's
you
how they
wouldn't-
got the plans of the Death Star.
You wouldn't
Like,
have.
that's
Well, you don't have to
You
know
can
that
know.
though, right? Yeah.
Hera did
this
not.
is how Gandalf learns about what's going on with the rings. Obviously.
Oh yeah,
No.
because old girl
No.
tells old girl takes the
no
info to him.
He just wanted to ask her some questions. She doesn't have any information though. But and they pretty much set that up. She doesn't know anything about why the orcs are looking for rings. All she saw was them looking for rings, and the odds of them finding the one ring in the Dunlendings that they killed there are pretty low.
You mean Pippin and?
No.
Yeah, Merry and Pippin, Dominic Monaghan,
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
Billy
cute.
Boyd.
We were
cameo.
at their
Yeah,
Q
that's
and A
cute.
at Dragon Con, and they like alluded that they would
Yeah.
be in the.
Oh, no way.
Nice.
Yeah, they did.
That's
Like,
cute.
they were like, I don't think we're supposed to say that.
Dominic.
They didn't say like what they would do.
His
They
voice was shot. My God.
I didn't even recognize
Yeah.
them.
They're a lot older now.
No, even in the Q&A, it dominated like this all the time. And it's just like, holy crap, dude.
You got too busy singing "We Are Everybody" on Lost. You know.
God,
So-
talk about Lost.
Yeah.
Don't no. No.
No,
Well, this
we're not going to talk about.
we
Lost.
gotta wrap this podcast up because otherwise we're gonna talk about Lost, which is gonna be a 5-hour podcast.
Good Lord, no. No, I think overall, when it comes to what this has been, is it consequential? I like, does everything have to be consequential in order to be a good story? Like, and I think that this was not consequential because the bloodline, the whole where like Theoden comes from, that's Freylof, and like that it's consequential for that. But as far as the other characters,
So when you were watching Lord of the Rings, you were saying, man, Theoden, what's his story? What's his granddad's story? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
and there are, to be fair, there are people
yeah.
who feel that way, to be fair. So,
Well, in some ways, yeah, but like when you're watching it, the thing that roots it and gives it gravitas is the fact that there is this iceberg down below that underpins a lot of this.
Yes.
Yeah, the
and
background
it
of
is, and you believe it to be true because you just know it's there if you go to look for it. And I think what happens is that people, if you go to look for the story, you'll find it, and you're like, oh, well, that was a nice little story about that, and then you can come back up and, well, this is the main storyline. But it's important to remember that this, as I said, not all roads lead to the War of the Ring,
right.
or the Hobbit, and it's important to understand that, like, well, how does this tie into Lord of the Rings? It doesn't have to. It doesn't, and it doesn't have to. It's so, and that way, it's not quite like Rogue One, because Rogue One has to lead into, episode 4, yeah, with the plans for the Death Star and stuff, which itself is like a retcon, what they did with that. So, that's where I'm coming down on it. I think it was a good story because if you read enough of the Silmarillion, there are so many low stakes stories about characters developing on their own and then just ephemera at the end of their tale. So Hera fits exactly in with that kind of storytelling and then more occurred.
Well, what's funny is one of the number one complaints I saw was that it wasn't Lord of the Ringsy enough.
Seriously.
Yeah.
What's that even
See,
mean?
that's the thing. The less Lord of the Rings it was, the more I liked it.
Yeah.
Like, so, or I shouldn't say like less Lord of the Rings, but like the less tie-in. Like, because if it
more
was,
of its
Matt,
own
as you
thing.
described it, like as this story that really was focused on existing in the tapestry and the history of Middle Earth, I would have found that more compelling. And again, it is, by and large, for the most part, that's what it is. It's just there's a few times where it's like, hey, guys.
Yeah, but
I
maybe
promise
because,
this matters.
Maybe because we just came off of Gladiator 2, which is nothing but Memba berries.
Yeah,
That's true.
But
I was like, this
there
was
is
an
a-
acceptable amount of Memba berries.
Yeah, it wasn't like at least remaking all 3 Lord of the Rings movies in a
It
2 hour.
wasn't egregious.
But with media literacy at just an all-time high, right? Like taking
Yeah.
people and just dropping them into like, by the way, we're going to just drop you guys right into Middle Earth. People go, where am I? What am I doing? Why do I care about any of this?
Context.
How is this like The
Yeah,
Hobbit?
where's
Like,
That's
Frodo.
like literally that's like criticisms out there.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
like, how come I don't understand why I'm mad that Saruman was only in there for a second because like I
Yeah.
want to know his whole origin story
but
now.
you
It's
really,
like,
at this point, you really don't. You really don't care about what he's doing because ultimately it's not super compelling. It is stuff that occurs that he does. It's like a history book. It's things that occur. It's like, what did George Washington do on the day before he became the general? It's like, well, who gives a shit? Like he's just like, you care about the big marquee moments.
Sure.
And that's what War of the Ring highlights because that's what he wrote. That's what he gave the most. He used the rest of his stuff that we consume like little vicious little chipmunks.
like we
We're
want
consuming
more.
it because Christopher Tolkien has curated all of these notes and put it into form for us. It was never intended to be published.
Right. Well, I guess, again, that brings me back to, we're out of time, but that brings me back to my other thing, which is like the IPification of everything.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think that's Caleb Masters projecting a little bit. But that
Goddamn
is
Christopher Tolkien.
no. It's more like film executives and
So
Amazon.
marketing.
so self-involved.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because like when this film is focused on doing its own unique thing, I think it works better than it doesn't. Whenever
Agreed.
it's like trying to, because they're trying to serve that audience that Amber's laying out, like, where's the hobbits?
Yeah.
Isn't Goldmore
There wasn't any elves or dwarves.
like, it's like you can't just tell a cool story in this universe. If you tell a story in this universe, you better make sure Lord of the Rings is in the title, and you better make sure that the average viewer can understand how it
How it's
connects.
gonna
I
connect.
agree. I agree.
I
with
don't
that.
think like
it's-
honestly the weird thing is I don't think Helm's Deep was enough for people. Like that's why
I mean-
for the average person, even
You
though
mean
it
the
was
same place as
that
the
was,
iconic
like-
battle from the Two
it was
Towers?
literally like most of the Two Towers. Yes, but people
they literally even
are
had the
ridiculous.
freaking. They even had and I wasn't going to complain about it because Matt did a really great job at being like, oh no, this is why that moment in the Two Towers was actually really powerful when they rode down the horses. You did a really great job on selling me about why that was so important to Theoden because it had already happened at that battlefield. And I was like, ah, shit, that's a good point. But when I watched it the first time, I was like, and there's the horn. They're going to summon them at the daylight and they're all going to show
all
up.
that stuff about him going out in the night and just like ripping people apart. That wasn't the orcs. That was really Hammerhand doing that.
Yeah,
It was him going out in the night with the horn, ripping his horn and like ripping the people apart and
Crazy.
killing them.
yeah.
Like
I
that was
almost
not
thought
made
he
up. That
was
was in the
going to
story.
be an
Well,
actual
it was about
wraith.
that life.
Yeah.
I thought like, oh shit, he turned into a
That
wraith.
is true. They believed even
he was
after
a
his
wraith.
death that he was erased and
Damn.
he haunted those people for generations. Like that's why
It was a little like B for B. I know it.
yeah. And
but
but
but again, that's
If it was actually written that way, though.
right. Well, no, that's the stuff that I agree with you. I'm like, I feel like we're already telegraphing how this
Yeah.
connects back without being like, and
Like
this is
heavy-handed
the,
about it.
I
the
think people
biggest
were a little
anime moment was
Yeah.
him fighting that big troll.
oh yeah,
That was
That was-
him
that was some
leaping in the
Dragon
air
Ball Z
like
shit,
9
bro.
feet
The-
and stuff. That was
Yeah.
the biggest anime moment.
Yeah, for sure.
But the like elephant being eaten by that monster was freaking metal.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
cool.
that was
I love
sick.
that. It was amazing. That
How did
whole
we not even
sequence.
talk about that? That
Yeah.
was nuts.
And how it started just a little spear chuck.
And I
it's
was like, oh my
Yeah,
god.
that was
I felt
awesome,
bad
man.
for the elephant.
And how he was like Orwin Helm is fighting to the death just in front of the gates, and they don't actually kill him. He just freezes to death. I'm like, that's
Like-
fucking.
it establishes
baller.
the cowardice of Wolf quite a bit. And
Yes.
Yeah.
I think at the end you very much know that Wolf is a coward.
He's a bitch.
He is an absolute coward.
Yeah.
So
I just want her to like me. She doesn't like me. I gotta go tear down the kingdom.
The
Oh,
what is the cousins? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
What was the cousin's name again? The one that got banished?
Freyloff.
Now that guy was a real one.
He's a real one.
He was like,
G.
hey, man,
He's like, you
I'll
banished
leave.
me, but I'm still got your back.
That was some real shit.
I'm gonna wait until the last possible second
that
to
was-
show up.
that was
but
pimp.
I'm coming.
I'm going to give you a name for Helm Hammerhand I thought would do a better job at voice acting him, and I want to see what you think, because I know you've been singing a lot about Brian Cox here.
Oh yeah,
Brian Blessed.
Mm.
I'm going to punch him. Just can you imagine that? Can you just imagine Brian Blessed as hell? He's 88, but so he probably doesn't.
I mean, Brian Cox isn't exactly a spring chicken
No.
either.
But I'm just saying, Brian Blessed as Helm Hammerhand, that would be sick. It's a red day. just going at it.
Well, guys, we've gone all over Rohan in this review discussion. I think we're out of time. Is there anywhere people can find you and all the things you're doing online? Harold Storey.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I still have all my episodes of Tunes up. If you are a fan of anime or animation or scores, music, the music in the cartoons that we loved. I got to interview a lot of cool composers for that. So if you're ever interested in those are still up if you want to check them out. Artists, there's a art project I'm working on. I just did, most recently I did the branding for a buddy of mine that modifies Game Boys. It does custom Game Boys, called Anxious Arcade, which is a great name, I think.
You mean Luke Parrish?
Yeah, the very one. I forget that you know
guest
him.
from our Gladiator 2 review.
I forget that you know him. Yeah.
I mean, it's very recently, but yes.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. But yeah, he so hit him up for all your Game Boy needs. But I love doing the branding for him on that. But yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of I think I said this last time we talked to you, I'm like a serial hobbyist, I think. And I just can't.
You do all the stuff,
I
man.
guess, yeah, like,
That's just the
I'm
modern
all over
era,
the place.
man.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Too much YouTube. It's just like, how
That's
do I
what it
learn?
is.
how to do
It means you dabble in a lot of stuff. That's a good thing.
That's great.
I'll take it.
Means a busy, interested mind.
Yeah.
Very much.
But
Curious.
yeah, that's about it, though. Other than that, just on Insta, I think is where I spend most of my time. Harold Storey, Storey. I will say, I got to throw this out. I forget I have to look the day up, but my friend Kellen McGugan does every year on Bilbo Baggins' birthday something called Hobbit Hop at a local bar, and we all just come and hang out.
Real?
Yeah, we come to hang
which
out.
bar?
It was at McNally's.
That's the perfect spot.
Is it like a height limit or something?
I don't know. I got in. I got in, so it's Short King friendly. But he does that every year, and I always try to remind people that I try to tell people that like Lord of the Rings more than I do because I sometimes forget. But yeah, it's costume required, so you got to come in the costume.
Oh, okay.
But it was a blast. This is the first time I came to it this year, so. A few people did. They had like the slippers and stuff. I was a ring wraith.
Oh, okay. All right.
September 22nd?
That's it.
Oh, man. Okay. I guess I missed it. I'm going to make it next year.
He does that every year.
Tell me and I can promote it on Soonercon.
Oh, sick. Yeah, for sure.
September 22nd, 2025.
Shout out to Kellen. He's always doing cool stuff like that.
That's very cool.
Are
Great
there
discovery.
Fireworks?
Yeah, man. What'd you say?
Are there fireworks?
There should be.
Let's clear with the city.
We'll just set up
dragon fireworks.
We love that. Firefighters love that.
Shit happening around McNally's. Then
we'll just throw an artillery shell out the window.
Oh God.
Oh man. Well, Harold, as always, sir, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for jumping in Laron's co-host seat today.
I love you.
I love you too, bro. Amber, where can people find you and all the cool stuff you're doing with Soonercon online?
Yeah, so Soonercon's all over the place now. We are on Instagram, TikTok. Follow us on TikTok.
Hey.
We're on Blue Sky now.
Yeah, Blue Sky.
We're on Facebook. We are done with X. About it.
No, none of us are sorry about it.
no one's sorry about it. But yeah, find us there. Find us at Soonercon.com. And basically we are a pop culture convention, June 20th through the 22nd at the Embassy Suites in Norman. We are a 3 days of fandom fun. It's just like nonstop nerddom. We bring out celebrity guests that we are should be announcing our first one this week. Yeah. And then we have more late night programming now. So we call our 18 plus late night programming LaterCon.
That's awesome.
That's like our after dark. And I will be doing a panel again this year called Am I the Asshole? And this will be sci-fi edition because we are to have a space theme this year. Our theme is Gateway to the Galaxy.
Yes.
And so basically the concept is panelists will come on and they will tell a story in the style of like, am I the asshole? But they are doing it from a character's point of view.
Oh, that's fine.
And then the audience
awesome.
has to figure out.
But they don't know who the character is.
No, so they're just going to be
That's
like speaking as if they are the character and asking the audience, am I the asshole?
That is so cool.
I actually did Bilbo for mine last year.
No way.
That's amazing.
And around his birthday event
awesome.
because he's an asshole, kind of an asshole.
What was the consensus?
Was there a consensus that Bilbo was
It was
the asshole?
me, Caleb Haldane,
And another lady. Oh, gosh,
Friend of the
I forget
show?
her name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caleb Haldane's a friend of everybody.
It's
Yeah.
true.
But yeah, basically.
Don't tell him I said this. He's the best Caleb.
Wow.
He has to listen to hear that part come out, though. So.
You're going to edit that out. Though.
Yeah, so basically each panelist tells a story, and then I ask the audience, first of all, if they can guess who the character is. And then the audience has a lot of fun guessing. Some of them are easier than others. And then I asked the audience for their consensus on am I the asshole, and like everyone was really gets into it. It's
That's
a lot of fun.
awesome, man. That sounds really fun.
We're going to have a variety of content this year targeted towards, kind of having fun later at night for adults because nerds are getting older and we want to do more adult stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, man.
That's
I
all.
want to be able to say asshole on a stage like that. I mean,
we might have risque cosplay this year. Hopefully, we're going to be moving the drag show to the main programming, so it's going to go spiffy.
Let's go.
So we're moving on it.
Soonercon.com. Sooner.com for more, ladies and gentlemen. That's exciting. Well, I'm super eager to see who the celebrity guests are and can't wait to see more in the programming. I have gone to Soonercon for the last several years. It's always a blast.
Yep.
And you guys crushed it with the very Lord of the Rings-ish fantasy theme last year. Some of the production design around was awesome.
Yeah,
so,
that's the theme room. That's my brainchild. I take it.
wow.
I take.
It was awesome.
I take a lot of pride in that. That was something I've been pushing at Soonercon for a number of years.
We go really hard on the theme.
Started with when we came back for the Kickstarter and we did the Heroes Homecoming, and I pretty much helped start and run that Kickstarter, and then that's how I kind of made my way into Soonercon, and now here I sit after I've killed all my enemies. I've killed all my enemies. I'm here.
Only one.
I am here.
He's the Highlander.
I Highlandered my way to top of Soonercon. So here I am.
Well, cool. Well, Matt, outside of Soonercon, is there anywhere folks can follow you online?
Sure. Much like, I'm done with X. So I guess, how do we say Blue Sky now? If you don't do, I just Solar in the Great.
No.
.bsk.social.
Yeah,
it's like
not
Solar in -- great.
That's the one thing. That's they've
It's
got
not an easy way to.
Yeah, they need to get on that. It's like Discord. You can't have spaces without dashes.
They need that.
there's a.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
That was a stupid joke. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm going to make. It's not a joke. I'm reporting on a real thing that I've heard from multiple people on Blue Sky that there's tweeting and they're like, well, what do you call Blue Sky?
Oh, don't say it.
He knows what I'm going to say.
I know what you're going to say.
Okay.
Say it.
Okay. I have to now. They call them skeets.
Unironically,
I don't know. Unironically, that's what they were calling them.
I think 75% of these people don't realize what they're saying.
No,
This is
I
like
don't
some
know.
Caucasian
I refuse
activity.
To believe.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call them that, but I have heard from multiple people that's what they are calling
Reporting
them.
white on white crime right
Yeah.
now.
That's crazy.
Did you see my skeet on block?
Y'all don't want to hear me skeet. Hey, yo.
Okay. Anyway,
Check out my skeet.
and check out all the stuff on Blue Sky. That's where the party's at. And of course,
Adam.
all the exciting things, Soonercon next summer at Soonercon.com. And of course, you can follow us on the Cinematropolis at Cinematropolis.com. Heading into the year end, we're going to be back in a couple of weeks with our Nosferatu. That'll be our final review of the
I
year.
wanna see that.
And I might have seen it. It might be really good. But we'll talk about that more next episode. And also, we'll have first couple weeks of January, wrap up 2024 coverage by talking about our top 5 films of this year and also a little sneak peek at what's coming in 2025. So check us out, Cinematropolis.com, all the social media channels. Hey guys, this has been fun. Thanks so much for joining
It's been
today.
a blast. Thank you for having us.
And listeners, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you again next time.